So a few days ago, Hikaru Nakamura posted this video. It's Hans Niemann getting taken to the woodshed, as he put it. I'd not actually heard that phrase before. I'm guessing it's an Americanism, right? I googled it and it means taken out for punishment, but it's particularly prophetic in a chess sense because Hans's pieces just get carved to shreds out in the woodshed during this game, right? And in the one that Hikaru covered. Now, his opponent in this game is a Russian GM originally, Arseniy Nesterov. He's currently playing under the international flag. And this game, I mean, it really speaks to the arrogance of Hans Niemann, in my view, and how he's talking and playing these days. And I've actually got a funny story to share on that point in relation to this game, but a bit more on that later. So Hans with white here, he kicks off with c4. This is round 10, I think, of the World Under-20s. His opponent, e6. We go back into a Queen's Gambit declined. We get takes. This is the Carlsbad pawn structure. The bishop develops outside the pawn chain. These are all very standard opening moves. And now knight g to e2. White shows his hand in relation to the plan. This is a very flexible square, and you leave the f3 pawn to run, which supports a later e4. So knight bd7, castles, rook e8. Sometimes white sends the king this way, by the way. You know, lots of interesting ways to play. We get queen c2, and now knight f8. So black starts this classic remaneuver, opens this bishop for action. We get f3, preparing e4, knight g6, that black king rock solid, and now e4 comes immediately on the board. Sometimes white prepares it a bit more, you know, brings a rook to the center somewhere, chucks in a pawn move or something. But Hans just blasting through here. Black captures, and here we can see that Hans has got nice control of the center. These squares are keeping those black minor pieces under lock and key, but these are hanging pawns, so they can be weak later on. They're not supported by any pawns at the base of the chain, so this is the strategic battle. Now black plays really interestingly here. Bishop e6. Now it looks like you're walking into this white pawn storm. h3 from Hans. This is often a very sensitive square. Got weakened when the f3 pawn took on e4. And now c5. Now what is black playing at? You're getting steamrolled through the center here. Well, there's a particular idea in mind. Now you can go d5 straight away, but Hans goes for this one. Gives up the bishop pair, yes, but now lands e5. The bishop moves away, so he's opened up the rook, trained on this point, and now d5. Hans just rolling the pawns through the center. Looks amazing for white. And there's a tactical shot here. If you capture, there's knight recaptures, queen takes, and bishop c4. And after that, queen wins a second pawn. This is the problem, the f7 point. The king moves, you pick up an exchange, and although your centre's crumbled, for the sake of being a pawn down, white is the exchange up. So no good for black. We don't see pawn captures, the bishop retreats. Now why would black let white gain all of this time and the big centre here? Well, the e5 pawn is now critically weak. So how does Hans defend it? Well, he has to keep rumbling forward. We get captures, but now the knight is loose. This is white's idea, to just carve open the king, start attacking. But black wins a second pawn, and this is a very dangerous attack. Now it looks like here for white, you want to actually capture that pawn, but taking immediately is not good. Now it's not actually because black can take here. This is a bad thing to do. Now rook f7 is deadly with the mate threat here. Bishop f6 no good. Obviously the knight smashes it off. But after knight takes on d5, you don't capture this knight, you go bishop e6. And this is actually better for black now, because although you can retreat the knight or bring something to defend here, black actually starts unraveling. You can check the king, queen g5, you start forcing pieces off, and the moment the boards open up, the bishop pair is going to be good for black. Remember that one. We see a masterclass in how to use the bishops in this game. So instead of taking here on d5, we see knight g3 played. Just quickly checking, one at rook f7. I never checked this one. Okay, so it says bishop h6 is a good move here. Slightly different variation. You can cover the mate. Again, presumably black then goes queen g5 or starts unraveling. So what do we see? Knight g3. Knight h5, now a huge threat to threaten mate, and you'd be covering the f6 square. So you have to fight against that, and rook e5 is a great move. Because now, if knight h5 comes, you're just in time with queen e7. It blocks this mate threat here, also stands behind the rook, of course, and the key thing about putting that rook on e5 is it defends this d5 pawn so the knight can't take there. If the rook was behind here, then the knight crashes through, hits the queen, you're in big trouble. So with this move not working, we see check, the king moves, and this is where Hans Niemann should repeat the position. But look at his opponent. He's in the lowly 2500s, right? I mean, this guy's 20 years old. He's still up and coming, just like Niemann, 20 years old. But a strong player, but not in Hans's league. Hans is thinking, he's going, no, I'm not taking the draw. I want to fight rook ae1. He just wants to win every game right now, regardless of the position, presumes he can outplay his opponents. On the one hand, great, fighting chess, you learn a lot. On the other hand, arrogance will only get you so far. And I talk from a point here of having watched a lot of his streams lately. And the way he talks is just like, dude, you got to chill a bit. Anyway, what's the problem with rook ae1? Well, the fantastic bishop to e8. This was the position from the thumbnail. And now no more check here. You're kicking the queen out of the way. It does snap off a pawn, but this is brilliant play from black. Because after the rooks come off, now there's queen b8. And not only do you offer the queen exchange, but you threaten to pick up the knight on g3. This is key because it forces Hans to take, rook recaptures, and you're trained on the b2 pawn. So now after this one drops, this pawn drops and point to this one. Sorry, I forgot. This is a great move. Black flicks in bishop h4, attacks that knight, king captures, and then still doesn't capture this pawn, goes bishop c6. It's just fantastic activation of these bishops on an open board. And there's no good square to jump to. You can't go to b4, of course. And if you go to e7 to hit that bishop, pick up a tempo, say to black, do you want to take here? Well, then you're walking into this, and there's pins, there's tactics, it's unprotected. This is losing for white. So Hans defends that knight with his rook, also sets up a check, then hitting this one, but the rook calmly takes on b2. Fantastic move here by Nesterov. Because now after check, king g8, yes, you can pick up this bishop, but it's terrible. This knight now drops, and because the rook and bishop are trained on this pawn, you cannot actually defend it with any white piece. Black's crashing through with a great game. Huge advantage, about -5.5 here. So coming back, Hans has to move this knight. He wants to get it out of the way and then start trying to counter-attack against black. But what should he do? Knight f5. Hit this unprotected bishop and threaten to check here and then pick up this one. Both knights now on that square, only one bishop defending. So black has to take here, white can take here, now rook d2 to cover this one, king g3, c4, knight f3, and at least white starts bringing some pieces into the defense. They're more active here, as you can see. The king's coming in quicker or this way than what we see in the game. But Hans goes knight e4, not as precise, going after the c5 pawn, but this is a fantastic move in response. Bishop to d8 played, because now if you take this pawn, can you see the brilliant tactical response which black has up their sleeve and can play against white here. So the move you can play is bishop to c7 check. Because if this knight captures, then you crash through here. Same problem. The king's got one square, and you set up this windmill tactic where you then win the white rook. You're in exchange ahead. This is a technically one endgame. So coming back here, taking is no good. And what instead? So the king is checked. If you step back, that's checkmate in one. So if you come here, well, now the problem is bishop g3. And without clicking through all the lines on and on and on, it's very problematic to defend this mate threat. You actually have to start giving material. And just to show one line, if you try and run the king, look at how the second bishop joins the party and they cut across the board. Whoops, like that. So the king moves back and then you deliver the mate. So the bishop, after this bishop, where are we, sorry? Yeah, here. So the pawn not taken because then there was this bishop c7 check. So we see the knight step back, covering this pawn, supporting this one, and now this king runs into the center. You maybe want to activate this bishop or something, but you have to cover e7, stop this check, picking up a loose piece. Now king g3, Hans finally squirming out the box, king e6, knight f4 check, king d6, and now Hans hops back with the knight, but he's a little bit paralyzed. Now it does set up ideas of knight e4 check. You know, the king couldn't take here, the rook covers, and then you'd be on that pawn. So what do we see? King d7, just anticipating that. Black ahead on the clock, has been all game. Now we see rook h7, Hans desperate for counterplay. Don't go bishop f6, blunder an entire minor piece due to these pins. So bishop c7 check played instead, again trying to lure this king to f3 when you run into huge problems with the pin, more tactics. So that one has to be taken, best move. Now the rook finally crashes through with check, drives the king up the board and covers this g-pawn so that after captures, white can't crash through with check. The rook is stranded and this is the problem. h4 played, but now king b6. That king moving around to shepherd home this c-pawn. Not only is black a pawn ahead, but it's passed and the rook is offside. And now here, Hans goes wrong in his defence. King e3 was best, just to try and get round and stay some defence with this knight. Maybe go a3, set up a barrier on these squares with the knight and pawn to stop the black king invading. This was the best defensive setup. But knight d1 was played, setting a nice idea in motion, because if black takes here, well, you free the rook, generate counterplay, and if black does this one, which happened in the game, let me run back to the moves, then Hans has knight c3 planned. You fork rook and pawn. What is black doing about this one? Well, this is where Nesterov unleashes a brilliant move. He ignores the attack on the rook and pushes on with pawn to c3. Because if captures, the pawn is running through. But we won't click down the line because we see something like that soon. What to do? h5 played, Hans running his own pawn, and now calm as you like, just king c5. Not even rushing here with pushing this pawn. Then allowing this one to drop after knight takes and rook takes. Here the knight now just takes on g2. Hans is fed up. But what else to do? You know, rook h8, top move, but it's just all way too slow. Eventually this one's pushing through. Not going to start clicking into every line. Long story short, it's lost. So Hans takes on g2. Now the pawn pushes on anyway. He jumps back. Queen is made. Rook takes here. Queen d2. And after rook e7, king d6. Now we see resignation. There's all sorts of nasty checks coming. You know, how do you stay on the file with this? Well, maybe go rook e5. And then the computer says queen d4 check is leading to mate in 5. King g5, okay, takes here. And of course, everything is collapsing. You've got all this kind of stuff going on, etc, etc, etc. So this was the final position. But one funny story that I want to show you. I'm going to click here to Hans Niemann's YouTube channel. It's going to be a bit squashed on your screen, but you get the idea. This video posted an hour ago, basically exactly as this game I've just shown you was finishing. Hans Niemann's channel, you know, he probably had it scheduled to post, right? Why I am better than 90% of all chess players. You can see the video below as well. Proof that I will conquer the chess scene. Picture of Magnus and everything. Like, the guy is just going hammer and tong for this idea he's going to be world champion and the best ever and #1. And fair play to him if he does it. But, you know, in the process of coming up, you might want to show a bit more humility when you lose into IMs, 2500s. Like, take the draw, take your medicine, and just accept that you can't destroy all these, like, 2500 players yet. You're not at that level. dude, just chill. Anyway, that's my tuppence, epic chess, weighing in on all of it. Love to hear your thoughts below, as ever. Thanks very much for watching, and if you want to see another epic game of chess, do see the video on screen, and I hope to see you again soon.